Hello, 7th graders. So I'm going to be going over quickly earthworm dissection in this video. Since this is going to be our first dissection, I just kind of wanted to walk through it with you guys before we actually do it in class, just so we'll have a little bit better understanding of what's going on. Go over quickly some tools that we'll be using for our dissections, and then we'll actually look at what we'll be seeing inside of the worm. So earthworms are in the phylum Annelida, and it translates into little rings. And when you look at these earthworms, you'll see why. So species in the phylum Annelida have segmented bodies. There's about 17,000 species worldwide. This includes things like earthworms, tube worms that we've seen in the oceans, and then also leeches as well. So here are just some dissecting tools that we'll be using throughout this week as we're doing our dissections. So kind of one of the major ones that we'll use probably just about every day are what are called dissecting pins. So this is what holds our specimens to our dissecting tray. So as we open them up, we'll pin them to the soft matting of the tray. This right here are forceps, so we'll use those to kind of help open things up a little bit, pull things out if we need to. Kind of a similar tool is the probe, which is right here. So we'll kind of just use this to move some of the internal organs around if we need to see certain things. Down here, so this is the scalpel. So we'll be using these to make incisions on our specimens, and this should go without saying, but these are very sharp, so just make sure you are very careful when using these. And then over here we have dissecting scissors, and we'll actually probably be using these more than the scalpels for making incisions. They're just a little bit easier to control and get through tougher things like bones and some of the thicker muscles. So the external anatomy of earthworms, pretty simple. We've probably all seen earthworms before. We have the mouth up here at the anterior end. Earthworms are made up of segments. You can see really well the setae, which are these little hairs on the outside of the body, and that's actually how they move. Okay, we're not going to be able to see these very well. We might be able to get some hand lenses out and see them a little better. So kind of our major, I guess kind of thing that we're looking for on the outside of the bottom is what's called the clitellum. So it's this kind of bulbous, lighter part of the worm, probably about a quarter of a third way down the body. Okay, so that's called the clitellum. Okay, so that's going to be a landmark that we're going to be using quite a bit. And then at the very end we have the anus. Okay, so that's where all the waste comes out. And this space in here, from the clitellum to the anus, it's a pretty long chunk of the worm. You know, it's probably 2/3 or 3/4 of the length of the body. So, you know, this part that we're actually going to be looking at is actually a pretty small part of the worm. Okay, for the incision, okay, again, here's that clitellum that we're going to be using as a landmark. So for your incision, you're going to be using the ventral. So we're going to be looking at the ventral part of the worm, which is the bottom of the worm. So it's nice and light. So you'll have a darker side and a lighter side. So we're actually going to be cutting on the lighter side. And you're just going to cut right from the clitellum all the way up to the mouth. Okay, make sure you're not cutting, you know, too far down into the worm. You want to be just under the surface of that skin layer there. Okay, and then come all the way up to the worm. And then we're going to be using pins to hold it open. And here's about what you're going to see when you open it up. Okay, again, we'll have these pins opening up the flaps so we can see the organs inside. Okay, so first we start with the mouth up here. Okay, and then one of the major things that you'll see next is actually the hearts. Okay, so they actually have 5 sets of hearts, which is pretty interesting. And when you see these, they'll actually look like little mouse turds, sort of. So they'll be dark black, and they'll actually come apart pretty easy. So you'll be able to see them pretty well. Okay, as an earthworm eats its food, it moves into the esophagus, and then in the crop and gizzard. So that's just going to be kind of helping break down the food a little bit. And then it moves into the intestine. And the intestine runs down almost the entire length of the body of the worm. So if we open it up, okay, and you kind of see all these organs really well, you can go ahead and open up the worm all the way out through the anus. Okay, and you'll see that this intestine, again, runs the entire length of the body. And one of your questions is actually going to be, why do you think the intestine is so long? And again, here's that clitellum, so as our landmark there. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple, easy first dissection that we'll start with, but it'll kind of help us work our way up into more complex organisms.